My own sister tried to get me fired by telling our company my degree was a fake. She reported me to human resources, triggering a formal investigation that could have ended my career. What she didn't know, what none of us knew, was who would be walking into that disciplinary meeting holding my original transcripts. This wasn't just a petty argument, it was a targeted strike at the foundation of everything I'd built. I'm Alina Vance, and for years, my sister and I navigated an unspoken competition. But when we ended up at the same prestigious firm, the rules of engagement changed forever. To understand the bomb she planted, you have to go back to the beginning, to the classroom where my future was first written, and to the jealousy that festered for a decade. Growing up, there was a clear script in our house. My older sister, Clara, was the star, effortlessly charismatic, the one who commanded every room at every family gathering. I was the shadow, the quiet one with her head in a calculus textbook or a robotics kit. Our parents, both accountants, valued two things above all else: tangible achievement and social grace. Clara mastered the second, I buried myself in the first. I told myself it didn't matter. While she was homecoming queen, I was winning state science fairs. When she got a luxury car for her 16th birthday, I got a used laptop and a scholarship to a summer coding camp at Stanford. The message was implicit but deafening. Her victories were celebrated, mine were merely noted. Everything changed my junior year of high school, in a place Clara had never bothered to look: Mr. Aris's Advanced Economics Seminar. He wasn't just a teacher, he was a former Fortune 500 strategist who taught like he was preparing us for corporate warfare. Most kids were terrified, I was electrified. He assigned a brutal final project: draft a viable turnaround plan for a failing real company. I chose a struggling semiconductor manufacturer. I spent 3 months buried in SEC filings, supply chain logistics, and union contracts. The night before it was due, I pulled an all-nighter, finishing at 5 in the morning. My paper was 87 pages long. 2 weeks later, Mr. Aris asked me to stay after class. He held my binder in his hands. "Alina," he said, his voice low and serious, "this isn't a high school paper, this is boardroom-ready analysis. Where did you learn to think like this?" I just shrugged, embarrassed. He looked at me for a long moment. "Don't let this environment dim that spark. The world out there needs minds like yours." That was the first time an authority figure, someone whose opinion I desperately respected, saw me, really saw me, not as Clara's quiet sister, but as a person with a brain that mattered. That conversation became the cornerstone of my future. Clara went to a large, well-known state school for business, a perfect fit for her social prowess. I set my sights differently. I applied to one place only, Wharton. It was a moonshot. My guidance counselor gently suggested backups. My parents were skeptical of the cost, but I had one secret weapon: a recommendation letter from Michael Aris. He'd left teaching the year prior to return to the private sector, but he remembered. The acceptance letter came in March. My father read it at the kitchen table, silent. He finally let out a slow whistle. "Wharton, that's serious?" It was, "I'm proud of you." It was an assessment of an asset, but for me it was everything. It was validation, it was escape, it was proof. That night, I overheard my mother on the phone with my aunt. "Clara's doing so well at state, such a social butterfly. And Alina, well, she got into Wharton. Can you imagine?" There was a pause. "I know, we don't know where she gets it." I packed my bags for Philadelphia with a ferocious hope. Wharton was a shock to the system, a beautiful, brutal proving ground. I was surrounded by legacies and geniuses, and for the first 6 months I was in over my head. I'd study until 2 a.m., wake up at 6, and do it again. My only lifeline was the memory of that conversation with Mr. Aris. "Don't let this environment dim that spark." Second year, I declared a concentration in finance and operational management. My thesis project involved the same semiconductor company I'd analyzed in high school. I tracked their collapse into bankruptcy. My professor, Dr. Evans, called my work uncommonly prescient. He suggested I send it to the executive who had led the failed turnaround. I never did, I was too nervous. But I got an A+, and a footnote in that paper would later save my career. I graduated magna cum laude. No one from my family came to graduation. Clara had a study abroad trip in Europe. My parents said the flights were too expensive. I took a picture of myself in my cap and gown, the empty seats around me, and sent it to an old email address I had for Michael Aris. He wrote back one line: "The spark is now afire, well done." I got a job at Stratagem Consulting, an elite cutthroat firm in New York. It was the trenches: 90-hour weeks, impossible demands, bosses who would tear your work apart to see if you'd put it back together. I loved it. It was the first place where my intensity was an asset, not a character flaw. I was promoted twice in 3 years. Clara, after bouncing through a few sales jobs, landed a role in business development at a flashy tech startup. It was all surface, parties, perks, vague titles. Her LinkedIn was pristine. My life was spreadsheets and stress dreams. We'd talk on the phone occasionally, the conversations increasingly strained. She'd ask about my salary, my title, with a lightness that didn't hide the sharp edge of the question. Then in 2022, the startup she worked for flamed out. She was adrift. I, meanwhile, had just been recruited by the crown jewel of the industry, Sterling Global, a private equity titan so exclusive most people in finance only knew it by rumor. The offer letter was a thing of beauty. It was also the match that lit the fuse. A month after I started at Sterling, Clara called me. Her voice was bright, artificial. Guess what? I got a new job in business operations. I was genuinely happy for her. That's amazing, Clara. Where? There was a pause on the line, a beat too long. At Sterling Global, can you believe it? We're going to be colleagues. The floor dropped out from under me. Sterling didn't have a business operations department. It had a sprawling, competitive internal support staff. It was a different universe from the deal teams, a world of internal politics and vague metrics. We wouldn't be colleagues. We'd be inhabitants of different castes within the same kingdom, and she knew it. Her first day, she came by my desk on the 42nd floor, the hallowed deal floor. She looked around at the silent, focused intensity, the billion-dollar deals on monitors, the way assistants scurried. Her smile was tight. "Nice office," she said. It sounded like a curse. For 6 months, we maintained a fragile fake peace. We'd get coffee in the cafeteria, make small talk. She'd ask pointed questions about my projects, my clients. I'd deflect, citing confidentiality. The tension was a third person in the room with us. Then in April, I was put on the deal team for the Atlas acquisition, the firm's biggest play of the year. My name was on the internal memo. The day the memo went out, Clara didn't come for coffee. She didn't text. I thought maybe she was busy. I was wrong. She was in the HR portal digging through the digital handbook looking for a specific policy. She was researching the procedure for reporting employee misconduct. And she had found her weapon, not in my present, but in my past. She remembered the name of my favorite professor from high school, the one who wrote the letter, Michael Aris. A quick search told her Michael Aris had left Sterling Global 2 years prior as its chief executive officer. The man who had seen my spark was the same man who now sat at the very top of the mountain we were both trying to climb. She connected two dots that weren't meant to be connected. My academic success, my rapid hire at Sterling, it had to be nepotism. It had to be a favor. It couldn't possibly be merit. So she crafted her story. She told HR that she had reason to believe I had falsified my educational credentials to secure my position, that my connection to the former CEO suggested an unethical bypass of standard hearing protocols. She presented it not as jealousy, but as a concerned employee safeguarding the firm's integrity. She filed the formal complaint on a Friday afternoon. The following Monday, I was summoned to a meeting with Human Resources and the head of my division. The subject line simply read, "Mandatory meeting rate compliance." As I walked down the long, silent hallway toward the conference room, my heart was a drum in my chest. I had no idea what was waiting for me, but Clara did. She was watching from the door of her cubicle 50 feet away as I reached for the handle. And just as my fingers touched the cold metal, the door at the far end of the hallway, the one that led to the executive suite, swung open. Michael Aris, the former CEO, walked into the hallway, but he wasn't just passing by. He was holding a slim archival folder, and he was walking straight toward me. Time slowed. I saw Clara's expression shift from smug satisfaction to pure confusion from across the floor. Mr. Aris didn't even glance at the HR conference room. He stopped in front of me, his face unreadable in that way only a veteran CEO can master. "Alina," he said, his voice calm but carrying, "a word before you go in, please." He gestured not to the side, but to the door of the very meeting I was about to enter. He opened it. Inside, Sandra from HR and David Chen, my division head, sat at the table. They looked startled, immediately standing up. "Michael," David said, "we weren't expecting." "I know," Mr. Aris said, closing the door behind us. He placed the folder on the table. "Sandra, David, I understand there's a compliance matter regarding Ms. Vance's credentials." Sandra recovered first, professional but wary. "Yes, sir, we've received a formal, internally filed allegation. We're in the preliminary fact-finding stage." "Good," he said. He didn't sit. "Transparency is critical. The allegation is that she falsified her academic record to gain employment here, potentially aided by an undisclosed personal connection to senior leadership, namely me." The air left the room. David looked at me, then at the folder. I just stood there, my mind a white noise of panic. Mr. Aris opened the folder. He didn't pull out a modern printout. He pulled out two aged official documents. One was a diploma from the Wharton School. The other was an official transcript. He slid them across the table to Sandra. "These are the original documents from my personal files," he said. "I was her professor. More accurately, I was her high school economics teacher. I wrote her a recommendation letter for her Wharton application. I had no involvement in her hearing process at Sterling Global. I had already departed, but as her former educator, I kept copies of her seminal work. This," he said, tapping the transcript, "is authentic. You are welcome to, and I insist you do, verify it directly with the university's registrar right now." Sandra picked up the transcript, her eyes scanning the embossed seal, the registrar's signature. David leaned over, looking at the grades. There were my A's in advanced financial modeling, my A+ in operational strategy, the thesis notation. Mr. Aris then looked directly at me. Alina, in my office at Sterling, I kept a file of work from former students who exemplified the analytical rigor this firm claims to value. Your Wharton thesis on the Semitron collapse is in that file. The footnote on page 42 of your thesis predicted the liquidity crisis that occurred 18 months later. Do you remember writing that? My mouth was dry, I nodded. Yes, sir, I based it on the debt covenant analysis from my high school project. Precisely, he said, turning back to Sandra and David. The through line is there. The intellectual curiosity is documented across a decade. This isn't a falsified credential. This is a validated pedigree. The allegation isn't just false. It's a profound misreading of a clear, meritocratic record. He let that hang in the silence. Sandra carefully set the transcript down. Sir, with all due respect, the allegation also suggests a conflict of interest in the hearing process due to your prior relationship. And you should investigate that, Mr. Aris said firmly. Pull the hearing committee notes, interview the partners who interviewed her. My only contact with Alina Vance between her Wharton graduation and today was a 2-line email congratulating her on that graduation. She did not know I was the CEO of this firm when she applied. I did not know she had applied until after she was hired. Any finding otherwise would be welcome. David finally spoke, his voice quiet. Michael, why bring the originals yourself? Mr. Aris's gaze hardened. Because false allegations of credential fraud are a serious matter, they destroy careers. They are also, in my experience, rarely about the credentials. They are about something else entirely. And when that something else involves using this company's compliance machinery as a personal weapon, I take it personally. This firm's integrity is not a tool for settling sibling rivalries. The word sibling hit the room like a physical object. Sandra's eyes flickered with sudden, dreadful understanding. David's head snapped toward me. Sibling. The employee who filed the report, Mr. Aris said, his tone leaving no room for doubt. Clara Vance, in business operations, they are sisters. I knew them both a long time ago. The meeting shifted instantly. It was no longer an investigation into me. It was an investigation into the investigation. Sandra's professional mask cracked, revealing sheer dismay. We were not aware of a familial relationship. It wasn't disclosed in the report. I'd be shocked if it was, Mr. Aris said. He gathered the original documents back into his folder. My role here is done. I've provided primary evidence. The rest is for HR and legal, but I will be following up. He gave a short, decisive nod and left the room. The silence he left behind was heavier than before. David put his head in his hands for a moment. Sandra looked at me, her expression a mix of apology and horror. Alina, why didn't you tell us the report was from your sister? I didn't know, I said, my voice finally finding itself shaky but clear. The summons didn't say I walked in here blind. Sandra and David exchanged a look. That single fact that I had been summoned without being told the accuser's identity while the accuser knew full well I was the target changed the entire ethical landscape. Standard procedure was to inform the accused of the nature of the allegation. They had technically, but omitting the accuser's name in a case of clear personal conflict was a catastrophic oversight. This meeting is adjourned, David said, standing up. Alina, you are not under any disciplinary action. Go back to your desk. Try to focus on your work. Sandra and I need to recalibrate. I walked out of that room on unsteady legs. The hallway was empty. Clara's cubicle was vacant. The news, it seemed, traveled fast. For the next 48 hours, Sterling Global was a silent volcano. I showed up, did my work, said nothing. My colleagues on the Atlas deal team had clearly heard whispers, but no one asked. The corporate instinct for survival is to avoid radioactive fallout. Clara was placed on immediate administrative leave. A formal investigation was launched into her conduct, not just for a false report, but for potential violation of half a dozen company policies regarding ethical conduct, good faith, and conflicts of interest. I thought that would be the end of it, a brutal career-ending consequence for her, a traumatic exoneration for me, but I underestimated two things: Clara's desperation and the internet. 3 days after the meeting, I got a LinkedIn message from a second-tier finance blogger I'd never met. Hi Alina, it read. Heard some wild rumors about a sibling showdown at Sterling Global over fake degrees. Care to comment? My blood went cold, I didn't respond. An hour later, a different message from a reporter at a tabloid business site, working on a story about credential fraud allegations at top PE firms. Your name came up, what's your side? It was leaking, not the truth, but the salacious, twisted version of it. The version where the phrase fake degree was in the first sentence, and the exoneration was buried in paragraph 10 if it was mentioned at all. I went to David Chen, panicked. He looked exhausted. We're aware, he said. Legal and comms are on it. The internal investigation is sealed, but someone is talking. We're trying to kill the story. Who's talking? I asked, though we both knew. We can't prove it, he said. But the inquiries are citing details only someone with access to the initial HR ticket would know. It's a targeted smear. She's trying to court of public opinion what she lost in the conference room. That night, I got a call from a blocked number. I knew who it was. I answered. Clara's voice was stripped of all pretense, sharp with fury and fear. "You ruined my life." "You tried to ruin mine first," I said, my own anger a cold, hard thing. "They're going to fire me, Alina, with cause. I'll never work in this city again." "You shouldn't have filed a false report." She let out a bitter laugh. "False? You have the former CEO carrying your papers like a butler? You think anyone will believe this was all just a coincidence? You were always his favorite. The quiet, brilliant one. He never even remembered my name." There it was, the raw, unvarnished truth. This wasn't about my credentials. It was about a teenage wound that had never healed, festering for over a decade, finally erupting in the most destructive way possible. "This isn't about Mr. Eris," I said quietly. "This is about you and me. It always has been." "You're right," she hissed. "And if I'm going down, I'm not going down alone. You think the world believes in innocent coincidences? They don't. They love a scandal. And a sister accusing a sister of faking her way to the top with a CEO's help? That's a headline that writes itself." She hung up. The threat was clear. She was going to take the private, internal nuclear detonation and try to make it public, radioactive fallout for everyone. My professional reputation, hard-won over a decade of brutal work, was now hostage to her narrative. The next morning, David called me into his office. His face was grim. "The story is about to break. A small outlet is publishing it in an hour. It's bad. It frames it as elite firms hearing practices questioned amid sibling fraud allegations. It mentions the CEO's involvement, but ambiguously. The word nepotism is in the subheading." I felt sick. What do I do? "Legal advises you to say nothing, absolutely nothing, but the board," he trailed off. "The board is nervous. They hate press like this. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The stain is on the firm." "Are they going to fire me?" The question felt absurd even as I asked it. "No," he said, but it wasn't reassuring. "But they may ask you to take a paid leave until it blows over, for the good of the firm. It's not right, but it's the calculus." I was being benched. My career, the Atlas deal, my future, all put on ice because my sister had lobbed a grenade into my life. The injustice of it was a physical pain. I went home that day, defeated. I turned off my phone. I stared out the window of my apartment, the glittering skyline of a city that suddenly felt hostile. And then at 7 p.m., my personal email chimed. It was from Michael Eris. The subject line was a counter-narrative. The email contained no greeting, just a bulleted list. The reporter at the publishing outlet, the name of the editor, 2 email addresses, and a single line: "The truth is only powerless if it remains silent. You have more evidence than they do, use it." He was right. I had been reacting, playing defense. Clara was controlling the story by being the loudest, most scandalous voice. I had the facts, I had the documents, I had a decade of work, and I had nothing left to lose. I opened my laptop. I found the digital copies of my Wharton thesis. I found the scanned copy of my high school project that Mr. Eris had kept. I found the email chain from the Sterling Global recruiter, time-stamped months after Mr. Eris had left the company. I compiled a timeline, airtight, sourced, boringly factual. But I didn't send it to the reporter. That would just be noise in their circus. Instead, I sent it to someone else, a former classmate from Wharton who now wrote for the Wall Street Journal's finance desk. My note was short. "I'm the subject of a salacious, false story about to be published. Attached is the true story with full documentation. Do with it what you want." I hit send. It was an act of war. And as I sat in the dark of my apartment, I realized the hallway confrontation was just the opening move. The real battle for my name, my career, and my future was just beginning, and it was going to be fought not in a corporate conference room, but on the front page of the world's most respected business section. The Wall Street Journal reporter wrote back in 20 minutes, "This is explosive, give me 2 days." For 48 hours, I was a ghost in my own life. I couldn't work, I barely slept. I watched the smaller, salacious story break on the business tabloid site. The headline was exactly as predicted: "Sibling sabotage at Sterling Global, Wharton credentials questioned." The comments section was a swamp of speculation. Nepotism runs deep. Always knew those Ivy League types cheated. My professional photo was right there next to the word fraud. My phone blew up with messages from confused colleagues, concerned friends. I sent one blanket text: "The story is false, the truth is coming." I didn't know if I believed it myself. Then at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, the link appeared. The Wall Street Journal headline was a masterclass in understated devastation, the anatomy of a false allegation, how a sibling rivalry weaponized corporate compliance. It was all there, my timeline, scans of my high school project and my Wharton thesis, side by side, showing the intellectual through line, the email from the Sterling recruiter dated well after Michael Eris's departure. quotes from the Wharton registrar confirming my record, and a single killer statement from a Sterling Global board member sourced anonymously. The internal investigation concluded the allegation was materially false and made in bad faith. The focus is now on the accuser's conduct. It wasn't an opinion piece, it was a forensic dismantling. It didn't call me a victim. It presented me as a case study in how merit can be attacked and how facts, when clearly presented, can act as armor. The effect was instantaneous. The tabloid story vanished from Google News within the hour. My LinkedIn inbox flooded with messages of support, and a few chillingly with job offers from competitors who saw the publicity and my documented resolve as an asset. Sterling Global's communications department issued a formal two-sentence statement. Sterling Global upholds the highest standards of integrity. The matter referenced has been thoroughly investigated and resolved internally. They didn't name me. They didn't need to. The journal article had done it for them. I was reinstated to the Atlas deal team without a word being spoken. The paid leave was never mentioned again. When I walked onto the floor, a few colleagues gave me brief, solemn nods. It was the corporate equivalent of a salute. Clara was officially terminated the same day for cause. The legal wording was brutal, gross misconduct and violation of multiple corporate ethics policies. She was escorted from the building by security. I didn't see it, I was told later. I thought that was the end, the truth had won, the battle was over. I was wrong. The first sign was a call from my mother that evening. Her voice was thick with tears, but not the kind I expected. How could you do this to her, Alina? You've destroyed her, she has nothing now. The narrative in my family had not changed. I was still the aggressor. My proof was just a bigger, more public weapon. She tried to destroy me first, Mom, I said, exhausted. She was scared, she was jealous. She's your sister, you should have protected her, not fed her to the wolves in the newspaper. My mother's loyalty, blind and absolute, was a wound I hadn't anticipated. My father was silent on the call, he always was. 2 days later, the legal envelope arrived at my apartment, a formal notice. Clara was suing Sterling Global for wrongful termination and hostile work environment, and she was nomming me personally as a co-defendant for defamation and tortious interference. She was arguing that my decision to go to the Wall Street Journal with my one-sided narrative had poisoned her professional reputation and directly caused her firing. She was claiming the original HR report was made in good faith based on a reasonable suspicion of nepotism. She was turning her own malicious act into a protected whistleblower action and my defense into an attack. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left me numb. My lawyer, a serene but sharp woman named Anya, reviewed the filing. It's a Hail Mary, she said, but Hail Marys can be expensive and messy to defend. She's betting the firm will settle to make this go away quietly. David Chen called me into his office again. The board was furious. The journal article, while factually correct, had drawn more intense scrutiny to the firm's internal controls. Now this lawsuit. Legal is advising a strong defense, he said, but they are also exploring settlement options with her counsel, a clean break. You can't settle, I said, my voice trembling with anger. If you settle, it implies there was merit to her original claim, it validates her, it stains me forever. It's a business decision, Alina, he said, not unkindly. The cost of litigation versus the cost of a settlement, it's not about right or wrong, it's about numbers. I was becoming a line item on a balance sheet. My vindication had a price tag, and the firm was calculating if it was worth paying. Then the second envelope arrived. This one was handwritten from my parents' address. It was from my father. Alina asterisk it began. Your mother is inconsolable. Clara is shattered. What happened between you two is a family matter. It should have stayed that way, taking it to the newspapers, airing our private shame to the world. That was a betrayal of this family. You have chosen your career over your blood. We cannot support that choice. Do not contact us until you have made this right with your sister. The paper nearly crumpled in my hand. The finality of it, the absolute moral inversion. In their eyes, Clara's lie was a mistake, my truth was a betrayal. I sat in my apartment for hours, the silence screaming. I had won the public battle, I had the facts, the evidence, the prestigious byline, and yet I was losing everything else. My family had chosen its side and it wasn't mine. My company saw me as a liability to be managed. The lawsuit was a cloud over my future, the victory felt like ash. Anya, my lawyer, called. We need to talk about discovery, her lawyers will subpoena everything. Your emails, your texts, your performance reviews, they'll look for any inconsistency, any hint of rivalry on your part. They'll try to paint you as equally malicious. I have nothing to hide, I said, but the weariness was seeping into my bones. It's not about hiding, Anya replied. It's about exposure. They will depose you. They will ask about your childhood, your relationship with Clara, your feelings. They will try to provoke you. This is going to get deeply, painfully personal. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole. It was Michael Eris. I opened the door, stunned. He stood there in a simple overcoat, looking out of place in my apartment hallway. "May I come in?" he asked. I nodded, wordless. He stepped inside, took in the sparse, tidy space, the legal papers scattered on my coffee table. "I read your father's letter," he said quietly. I must have looked shocked. "Anya is my lawyer as well. She thought I should know the full scope." "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice small. "Because this is the hard part," he said, sitting down. "The part after the facts have been established and you realize facts don't heal relationships. The part where the cost of being right becomes clear." "They hate me," I whispered. "They don't hate you," he said. "They hate the mirror you've become. You are living proof that their preferred narrative, the narrative that centered Clara, was a fiction. That is a terrifying thing for a family structure to face. It's easier to blame the mirror than to question the reality it reflects." He looked at the lawsuit notice. "She's escalating because she has nothing left to lose. You took her weapon, so she's reaching for a bigger one. The lawsuit is that weapon, but it's also a trap." "A trap?" "If you fight her with the same ferocity in court, you become what she accused you of being: ruthless, career-obsessed, willing to destroy family. You win the legal battle and lose the moral high ground in the eyes of the people whose opinion, foolishly, you still care about. If you roll over, you let a lie define your professional legacy. It's a checkmate designed to make you lose, no matter which move you make." The hopelessness of it threatened to swallow me whole. "So what do? There's no move." "There is always a move," he said. "But it requires stepping off the board she's playing on. She's playing a game of destruction. You must change the game entirely." He leaned forward. "The board at Sterling is considering a settlement because it's clean. What if you propose something unclean? Something that doesn't hide the truth but builds from it?" I was lost. "What do you mean?" "You have the spotlight now, however briefly. You have documented evidence of a serious systemic vulnerability, how easy it is for a bad faith actor to weaponize HR policies. What if instead of letting Sterling settle to make this go away, you propose they lead? Establish an industry benchmark for investigating internal allegations with safeguards against malicious reporting. A task force, you could chair it." The idea was so vast, so unexpected, it left me breathless. They'd never agree. It's an admission of failure. "It's an assertion of leadership," he corrected. "Turning a private scandal into public innovation. It makes Sterling the hero of the story, not a victim. It would completely reframe the lawsuit. Clara would be suing to stop the creation of ethical safeguards born from her own actions. It's untenable." He stood up to leave. "Think about it. You have the leverage of a sympathetic figure who also holds a bomb. Use it to build something, not just to defuse one." After he left, his words echoed in the silence. "Change the game." I looked at my father's letter, at the lawsuit, at my own reflection in the dark window. I had been fighting for my name, for my past. What if I fought for my future, and in a way that redefined the entire conflict? I picked up my phone. I didn't call my lawyer. I called David Chen. "David," I said, my voice clearer than it had been in weeks. "Tell the board I have a proposal, but it's not about settling. It's about transforming this mess into the thing that sets Sterling apart forever. I need a meeting with everyone." I hung up. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had just shifted beneath our feet. I was no longer playing defense. I was about to rewrite the rules. And the first person who would have to face those new rules was sitting in a lawyer's office, convinced she had me cornered. She was about to learn that the quiet sister she'd underestimated had just learned how to play a much, much bigger game. The board meeting was held in the 48th floor executive conference room, a glass-walled arena overlooking the city. I wore a simple black suit. My notes were not about defense, but about architecture. David Chen was there. Sandra from HR was there, the firm's general counsel. And 7 board members, their faces a spectrum of skepticism and weary curiosity. I didn't talk about my sister. I didn't talk about the lawsuit. I presented the problem as I now saw it, a systemic vulnerability. "We have best-in-class protocols for verifying external credentials," I began. "But we have a reactive, vulnerable protocol for vetting internal accusations. A single bad faith actor can trigger a process that costs hundreds of hours, creates legal liability, and destroys reputations before the facts are known. The current system assumes good faith. We can no longer afford that assumption." I laid out my proposal, the Sterling Integrity Initiative, a 3-pillar framework. First, a mandatory mediated pre-filing assessment for any internal allegation involving personal relationships to filter out conflicts before they become formal cases. Second, a rapid response verification team with direct, pre-authorized access to external validators like universities to confirm or debunk factual claims within 72 hours. Third, and most importantly, a clear, published policy that making a demonstrably false allegation with malicious intent is itself a fireable offense, with potential for legal recourse for the accused. "This isn't about making it harder to report real misconduct," I said, looking at each of them. It's about making it impossible to weaponize the process. It turns our biggest weakness into a marketable strength. We become the firm that protects its talent from internal sabotage. The General Counsel spoke first. The legal exposure from the current lawsuit could be mitigated if we position this as a proactive, industry-leading reform. It reframes the narrative. A board member, an older woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. You're asking us to invest in a new internal infrastructure because of a personal family dispute. I'm asking you, I corrected gently, to invest because a personal family dispute exposed a multi-million-dollar risk. The next one might not be a sister, it might be a rival for a managing director position. The tool exists. It will be used again. We can be the first to build a shield. There was a long silence. Then David Chen said, I'll commit division resources to a pilot program. One by one, the board members nodded. It was approved, not with a bang, but with the quiet click of risk-averse people choosing a smarter risk. The news was announced internally the next week. My name was on the memo as the inaugural chair of the steering committee. The message was clear. The firm was backing me not despite the scandal, but because of my response to it. The effect on the lawsuit was immediate and brutal. Clara's lawyers had built a case on the idea of a cover-up, of a firm protecting a favored employee. They couldn't attack a firm that was publicly overhauling its system in response to the incident. It made their client look not like a whistleblower, but like the catalyst for expensive, embarrassing reform. A week later, they offered to drop the suit against me personally if Sterling agreed not to pursue legal action against Clara for filing a false report. It was a retreat, a messy, face-saving retreat. Sterling's lawyers, following my steering committee's first official recommendation, countered. They would not pursue Clara if she agreed to a legally binding public statement drafted by Sterling acknowledging that her allegations were false and made without evidence. No monetary settlement, just the truth on the record. She refused. The lawsuit limped on for another month, but the life had gone out of it. Her own lawyers were clearly advising her to cut her losses. Finally, she folded. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. She got nothing, not a dollar, not a reference, not a whisper of vindication. The silence from my family was absolute for 6 weeks. Then on a Sunday morning, my mother called. Her voice was hollow. She's moving to Chicago. She can't find work here. She says everyone knows. I didn't say I told you so. The victory was too empty. I'm sorry, Mom. Are you? She asked, and the question was genuine, not an accusation. I thought about it. I'm sorry she's hurting. I'm sorry this is the outcome. I'm not sorry I defended myself. There was a long pause. Then your father, he read the article in the journal, the big one, he showed it to me. Another pause. He said the part about your high school project. He remembered helping you bind it at the kitchen table. He said he forgot about that. It was a tiny, shattered piece of a bridge, but it was there. I remember, I said softly. The Sterling Integrity Initiative launched in beta that quarter. We partnered with an external ethics consultancy. My first hire was a former federal investigator. We built the protocols from the ground up. It was hard, meticulous, unglamorous work, and it was the most meaningful thing I'd ever done. A year to the day after the hallway confrontation, I was in my new office, a smaller, quieter space dedicated to the initiative. When my assistant said I had a visitor, it was Clara. She looked different, thinner, older, without the armor of her perfect hair and aggressive confidence. She stood in my doorway, unsure. Can I come in? She asked. I nodded. She sat across from me. The last time we'd been in a room like this, she was trying to end my career. I'm leaving for Chicago tomorrow, she said. I got a job, not in finance, in operations for a nonprofit. It's fine. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. She looked around the office at the diagrams of the new process flow on my walls. You built a whole department out of it. I built a solution to the problem you exposed, I said. She flinched but nodded. I came to say I read the white paper you published, the one about the initiative. It's smart. The compliment seemed to physically pain her. And I came to say I'm sorry, not the legal kind of sorry, the real kind. I was so jealous of you, of how easy he thought you were, of how hard things came to me and how you just absorbed knowledge. I thought if I could prove you were a fraud, then I wasn't a failure, I was just the only real one. The honesty was so stark it was disorienting. This wasn't a performance, this was a surrender. I'm not a fraud, I said. I know, she whispered. I always knew that was the worst part. We sat in silence for a minute. The ghost of our childhood, of all those silent dinners and missed recitals and competing for scraps of attention, hung between us. I don't know if we can be sisters again, I said finally. Not like normal ones, too much is broken. I'm not asking for that, she said. I'm clearing my side of the field, so you don't have to wonder if I'm still lying. I'm not anymore. She stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. Mom and dad, they're scared of you now. Did you know that? Not in a bad way. They don't understand the person you became, the one who fights back. They only ever knew how to handle the one who stayed quiet. After she left, I sat for a long time. The victory, the initiative, the exoneration, it all settled into a quiet, solid place inside me. It wasn't happiness, it was peace. The final surprise came 3 months later. A sealed envelope delivered by courier to my office. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a photocopy of a withdrawal form from the University of Pennsylvania's archives. It was dated the day after the journal article was published. The form showed that someone had requested and checked out the original bound copy of my Wharton senior thesis from the library's special collections. The requester's name was Clara Vance. There was a sticky note attached in her handwriting. I needed to see it for myself. Page 42, you were right, I'm sorry. She had gone to the source. She had sought out the proof, not to destroy it, but to finally see it. To know unequivocally that the sister she'd tried to erase was real. It was the most profound apology she could have ever offered. The initiative was made permanent last quarter. We've already been approached by 2 other firms interested in licensing the framework. The scandal that was supposed to end my career became the foundation of a new one. I have dinner with my parents once a month now. It's stiff, careful. We talk about the weather, their garden, my work in vague terms. My mother hugs me when I leave. My father sometimes calls me kiddo, a name he hasn't used since I was 10. It's not the relationship I dreamed of. It's a new one built on the ashes of the old with clearer boundaries and lower expectations. And that makes it real. Clara and I exchange texts on birthdays and major holidays. No deep conversations, just a digital nod across the distance. It's a thread, thin but intact. As for Michael Aris, he sends me a book every year on the anniversary of my Wharton graduation. The latest was on architectural resilience. The inscription read, "The strongest structures are designed with the memory of the last storm in mind." I sit here now in the office of the department I built because my sister tried to break me. She handed me a weapon and I chose to use it not for retaliation but for reconstruction. The truth didn't just set me free, it gave me a blueprint. And if you're watching this holding your own secret, your own family wound, your own professional lie someone is telling about you, I want you to know this: you have more power than you think. Your proof, your work, your quiet consistency is a foundation. When the storm comes, and it will, you don't have to just weather it. You can learn its patterns, you can study its weaknesses, and then you can build something the storm can never touch again. Start with one fact, build out from there. The architecture is waiting. So here we are, at the end of a story that began with a lie meant to shatter a career. But it didn't end there, it never does. The real story is always what happens after the explosion, in the dust and the quiet, when you have to decide what to build from the rubble. For me, the rubble was a destroyed relationship with my sister, a fractured family, and a professional reputation hanging by a thread. What I built was a new kind of integrity, one tested by fire. I built a department. I built a framework that protects others, and slowly, brick by painful brick, I'm building a different kind of family connection, one with boundaries, with honesty, without the old, toxic scripts. Clara's lie was a poison, but my response didn't have to be another poison. It could be an antidote, not just for me, but for anyone who walks into that office after me. That's the choice we all have when we're wronged. Do we spread the damage, or do we contain it, study it, and use our hard-won knowledge to fortify the walls for the next person? I learned that the truth isn't a shield, it's a tool, a scalpel. You can use it to wound in retaliation, or you can use it with precision to remove the sickness and suture what's left back together. Neither is easy. Only one leaves something whole behind. If you're watching this and you see a piece of your own story here, maybe you're the one being silenced, or maybe you're the one holding a secret guilt, or maybe you're just in a battlefield, professional or personal, that feels impossible to navigate, I want you to hear this. Your foundation is your work, your proof is your consistency. Your power is in your next move, not the reactive one, but the conscious one, the architectural one. What will you build from your rubbles? Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if it made you think about your own architecture, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below, tell me what you would build. And if you want more stories of resilience, of quiet victories, and of people rewriting their narratives against all odds, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There are so many more stories to tell, and I'd be honored to have you along for the next one. Until then, keep building.